Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited to be posting another video, man. I love this Thor God of Thunder series. It is so good. And make sure that if you have not watched part one already, you go back and watch part one, where we kind of dive into the start of everything, leading into the God Butcher series. And so without further ado, not too much to get into. I want to keep this short and sweet and simple, but if you could hit the like button for me so that we can reach more of an audience and be able to make the community bigger and bring everybody together, and subscribe if you find value. And if you don't find value or you don't like the video, drop a dislike and let me know why, so that I can kind of switch things up and make things a little bit more interesting for you guys. But without further ado, let's get started. So picking up with issue 2, also being part 2 of 5 of the God Butcher series, we left off with young Thor, who found a floating godhead and remains in a river in Iceland. And present day Thor, all of the gods of Endegar that he found in the castle were butchered, and future Thor was left alone as the only standing member of Asgard, alone to fight the forces of Gore and his black berserkers, with nothing more than his hammer Mjolnir and the sword of Odin in hand. And now, picking up in the present day, in the great weapon halls of Asgard, Thor is seen still unable to lift Mjolnir, as he states that he's wrestled dragons, slain longboat-sized wolves, and been in more battles than most gods that are twice his own age, and he still can't understand why he is unable to be worthy enough to lift the hammer. Picking up in 893 AD in the Baltic Sea, on one of the men's ships, Thor and company are sailing through the waters. As the men are instructed to row faster, we can see that there's a ton of fog, and one of the men tells Thor that they should slow down, but he says, with what he sailed through in his day, in tempests of fire to endless hurricanes of ice, he isn't bothered by just a little bit of fog. And we know that this is Thor. He's not bothered by much of anything, because they are led by the eyes of a god. And we can see a mysterious figure in the background of the fog. And this is where it gets just a little bit eerie. But one of the men rowing yells that there's someone in the mist, and that he's walking on the water, and that he could see his face. And some of the other men on the ship just start yelling at him, thinking that he's crazy, telling him to shut up. But Thor just stares into the fog menacingly, with a man yelling that it was not the face of just any man. And Thor tells him to stop chattering and to start acting like Vikings, or it is the wrath of Jarnbjorn that they will have to face. And Thor tells his higher-up guard to inform the others to start to go slower through the fog. And off in the distance, the figure follows them as he smells the flesh of the god Thor, and muttering to lead him to their kin. He's just in the background, just chasing along. Days later, they arrive in the banks of the Never River, which we will soon know as Russia. And men on both sides are impatient about the plundering and battle. Thor tells them that he didn't cross the ocean and face a bunch of Slavs with spears, just to face a bunch of Slavs with spears. And he told them that he was here because gods he could fight were promised to be here. And men on the other side tell him that the gods will be there soon enough, and they'll take the wagging tongue of Thor's off. And we see that Thor is there to fight Chernobog the Black and the Lord Storm. And all the men turn, as it looks as if one of the gods is now finally approaching. Bloodied and terrified, we see that the horse of the Storm Lord approaches riderless and stomping about as Thor tries to calm it down. The men on Thor's side just yell about the horse showing up, but no sign of the god anywhere to be found, with Thor telling them to just do as they wish. And so Thor takes the steed and flies straight into the sky, as both sides seem to start to fight. And then off in the distance, the sky starts to rain down with blood as Thor gets closer to Chernobog the Black. Chernobog, I don't know how I should be pronouncing that, so I apologize, you guys. But Chernobog the Black, stating that the reign of death has just begun. And as Thor passes Chernobog the Black, we see nothing more than just a headless rider on a fleeing steed. And Thor can't help but think that someone had just ruined his fun for the day, not being able to fight those gods. And I guess if I was Thor, I'd be pretty irritated too, not being able to get in my fix of fighting or killing or whatever it is. And just as he's flying away and talking to himself about not knowing how they were slain, he has a nagging feeling in the back of his skull. And ever since he came across the head of the butchered god in Iceland flowing through the river, he can't help but feel the same as a boar would feel in the forest right before he's about to get impaled by a spear. Then the head of his horse is sliced off clean by none other than Gore himself, asking if he can feel the sense of hope of helplessness as he falls through the sky, and that's how it feels to be mortal. Because as we know, Gore is not a god, and well, by certain standards, we might consider him a god because of what he's becoming. But as it stands, he's just a mortal with the black goo, or the all black, the necro sword. And with the feeling of being mortal, and he'll learn the feeling of being butchered. As Thor falls through the sky, he's able to land on Chernobog the Black's horse. And with Chernobog's body falling off behind, he yells and goes in to attack Gore, yelling that he is an Asgardian bred warrior, and Gore is nothing short of happy to see that he's deciding to fight back, as opposed to being a frightened little child of a god like so many that he's fought before, but not only fought, killed before. The two swing and block each other over and over, and Thor tells Gore that he is the last god Gore will ever see. And Gore responds with a smirk, saying, "You're Asgardian, huh? You'll be the first of that kind that I will kill, but you won't be lonely. Your entire pantheon will be there with you when I'm finished." And Gore begins to think back to when he was a child, and when he first learned of the difference between war and murder. While the two trade shots, we learned that when he was a boy, a god by the name of Dagger was on a killing spree through the 9 realms, killing hundreds. Even though he was young, he had already seen his father slay thousands and thousands of different enemies and come home drenched in the enemy's blood. It's just war, his father always told him. Even the greatest warriors relished the killing stroke and get lost in the bloodlust. Then one night he snuck out and went to see the face of the man Odin had locked away in the dungeon, and to see if his eyes differed from that of his father's. And he slipped away and fell into the dark. He slipped and fell into the darkness where the murderer stayed. Thor saw his eyes, but they were not what he had expected. They were calm and frighteningly serene, ready to defend himself with nothing more than his teeth and his fists. All the guy did was talk to Thor. All he wanted to do was talk. He told Thor about what he'd done, but Thor only struggled to understand why. His why. He told Thor he'd killed children no bigger than him, but never laid a hand on Thor himself. But the look on Dagger's face made you feel as if you were already dead, just as he was talking. Now, Thor was in the pit for 5 hours before anybody had found him. And the very next day, the god was beheaded by Odin himself, and even headless, the god had nothing more than just a smile on his face, as if he was satisfied with everything that's happened. And Odin had done nothing but just dismissed him as a madman, and Thor believes he was something much, much worse than just a madman. And now Gore tells him he's probably used to fighting beings that are terrified of him, and not someone who dares to gaze back at his face or in his eyes with the same menacing look that Thor has, and dared to fight him back. And Thor punches Gore across the face, telling him that he's used to fighting warriors, and that Gore is definitely not that, but only a butcher of gods, and that he's seen the likes of him before. Gore kicks him across the face, telling him he does not believe that he has fought somebody on his caliber, on his level. And haunted by the eyes of Dagger, he didn't sleep for weeks as a child. And this is just him thinking back again, that as he was haunted as a kid by the eyes of Dagger, he just could not sleep, and that he would pray to the elder gods in hopes to never see such a look on someone's face again, and that, as with most prayers in life, Thor's had went unheard. Now, stabbing Thor through the stomach, Gore wonders what poor fellows worship such a weak god as him, and ask him what he is the god of. And we learn that Gore has killed gods of war, gods of chaos, of fear, blood and wrath, of jealousy, lies, plagues, earthquakes. the list just keeps going. This man is a cold-hearted killer. And he demands Thor to tell him what he is the god of before he dies. And beaten and senseless, Thor mutters back, "Thunder." And this is very reminiscent of Thor Ragnarok, when Hela's like, "And what were you the god of again?" Just as she's choking him on just overlooking all of Asgard, and he calls down this big bolt of lightning, crashing through both of them, and it strikes Gore, and it leaves the two falling through the air. And we pick up with the present day Thor still fighting the berserkers, and still in the Indegarian castle. He tells the dead gods of Indegar that he promises that he will avenge their deaths, that he will finish what he started so long ago, no matter the butcher's power, where he runs, and no matter how long it takes. He leaves the castle of Indegar, of the Indegar gods, taking off to Omnipotence City. And back on Earth, we see lying in the snow, lifeless, with his axe sticking out of the snow. It seems young Thor has been defeated by Gore. And this is where we leave off for part 3. Let me know what you guys think of the story down in the comments below. And let me know if you guys like the idea of me going issue by issue, or if you guys would like me to just summarize like a handful of issues at a time, or the whole story as much as I can. But I do kind of like the concept of going issue to issue with the comics, because I think it can portray a lot of things differently than just skipping over a bunch of things, just trying to shorten the story. But leave a comment down below letting me know your guys' thoughts. Make sure that you dislike if you disliked, and let me know what you guys did or didn't like. Subscribe if you find value in the channel, and I appreciate you guys. And we just crossed 200 subs this week, and I'm so excited about it, and I can't thank you guys enough. We're growing. We are growing, and we got a lot more places to go. We definitely aren't even close to being done yet. Got a lot more in store for the future. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.